Hey, this is Paul James Caden, one of your co-hosts for the podcast People Under the Stairs.
And this is Stan Wangland, the other half of the amazing duo of the People Under the Stairs. And we're hoping that you'll tune in and listen to our wonderful podcast. Hey, Paul, tell the folks some of the things that we talk about in the podcast.
We talk about a wide array of subjects, the paranormal, UFOs, missing 411, even such things as some of the conspiracy theories out there that are wild, things that are happening in the news and our world. If it's strange, if it's weird, if it bears talking about, we'll cover it on the show.
Yeah, we do it from a really balanced perspective. We just don't, come up with something, throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. We try and have, the actual facts of what's going on with interesting people as guests on the show, different authors, and, allowing them to tell their story uninterrupted and, in a full and interesting format. So you can get into anything from artificial intelligence to people who say they've been abducted and been on a flying saucer.
So if you enjoy those topics, we hope you'll give us a listen and join us under the stairs.
Yeah, and for those of you who regularly listen to podcasts, even those of you who are new, we're on all the podcasting platforms, and we're very, very easy to find. So give us a listen.
Welcome to Paranormal Heart, a place where people can talk about their paranormal experiences. With your host, Kat Ward, along with a special segment, Oddities with John Mallard.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Paranormal Heart. Thanks so much for tuning in again. As you already know, you can find us on the second and last Sunday of each month on Podbean and YouTube. You can also find us on sparkradionet.org, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Podchaser, and anywhere you find fine podcasts. It's absolutely beautiful here in the Ottawa Valley the past few days. It's amazing. Everyone's out and about even more. It's getting warmer every day, and things are starting to slowly open up again. More businesses, parks, and trails. The complete fire ban has been lifted, which is great because we can now have backyard fires again. Let me know how things are in your area. Is life slowly starting to get back to normal? This episode's shout out goes to my listeners in Japan. I appreciate your support and hope you're all doing well in Japan. Our resident oddball is back this episode with Oddities with John Mallard. What weird stories have you found for us this time, John?
Hey oddballs, welcome back. It's time for more oddities, strange facts that are very true about an odd world here on Paranormal Heart. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. The world is full of filthy liars. There, I said it. It's true. Filthy liars. They're terrible people. Think what you can tell what's in the products you buy by reading the labels. Let me tell you something. They're full of lies. Think again. Here are 4 examples that show how companies stretch the truth to increase their sales. Yeah, that's right. I'm busting on some companies right now because people have these labels and it's all lies. It's BS. It ain't true. Anyway, I think you guys are really going to like this because this is actually kind of cool. It's like, what? Really? Anyway, here it goes. Fresh is the new frozen. The label says, this turkey, never frozen. So you assume it's fresh turkey and it's never been frozen, right? But actually, according to government rules, to be called fresh, in quotation marks, a turkey has to be stored at above 26 degrees Fahrenheit which is the freezing point for poultry. But the label still doesn't have to say frozen unless it was stored at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. So a company can legally say it was never frozen, even if it was stored at 1 degree Fahrenheit. You lying son of a gun. Imagine. Poor turkey froze to death. Okay, so one of my favorite characters ever is Dale Gribble. And he is from King of the Hill. And he is just the best character ever. And every single time I think of him, I think of what he does for a living, which is kill bugs. He's a bug killer. And, yeah. Anyway, this one's about pesticide ingredients. The label says pesticide ingredients, then lists them. So you assume all the ingredients, particularly the toxic ones, that might be harmful, are on the list, obviously, right? Guess what? According to a recent study, over 600 toxic chemicals included in pesticides aren't disclosed on the brand label. And why not? Well, under federal regulations, these chemicals don't have to be listed if they're inert ingredients or chemicals that assist in killing bugs or weeds but aren't the active agent of destruction. Why aren't they listed? Well, according to some pesticide companies, they say they need to protect their trademarked secrets. Well, there you go. So if the label says on something you buy recycled paper, what are you going to think? Well, I'm going to assume it's been used by a consumer, newspaper, office paper, cardboard, etc., then sent to a recycling center and then turned back into paper again, like recycled, right? Well, actually, the only time you can be sure that's true is if the label says post-consumer. Otherwise, it could be something else. Paper manufacturers dump paper from the mill floor back into the paper pulp as well, and the government allows them to call this paper recycled. Oh, you lying son of a... Ugh. And then there was this one. This one ruined my life today. Because you know what? Even as a young child, until this very day today, that's right, I've lifted weights and stuff like that, and sometimes, listen, I can't get my macros, man. I can't get it in. So you know what? I'm going to grab a junk food. I got to eat something, and my go-to thing is chicken nuggets, because guess what? At least there's protein in there, right? There's meat, right? Wrong. The label says chicken nuggets, so you assume it's chicken meat. Well, according to the National Consumer League, when convenience foods such as chicken frankfurters, chicken nuggets, turkey bologna, or anything else are processed, there's no telling what's in them. Mechanically deboned poultry may contain bone fragments, marrow, kidneys, skin, and lungs as byproducts of the process. These byproducts are not listed as ingredients, though, so consumers don't know what they're eating. Ugh. Labeling requirements allow the poultry industry to hide behind a vague description of product as chicken meat. You freaking lied to me, man. You lied to me. You lied to me about chicken nuggets. I'm rotted. But you know what? It's pretty odd when you think about it, what these manufacturers get away with. You wonder what's in your coffee. You wonder what's... My God. You wonder what's in this podcast. Oh, hope it doesn't give you an earache or something. Anyways, guys. Hope I haven't ruined your lives too much. Back to you, Kat.
Thanks so much, John. My guest this episode is a returning guest and a good friend. He's an author, poet, and folklorist. Please welcome back the Cryptoguru, Mr. Ron Murphy. Hello, Ron. Welcome back to Paranormal Heart.
Hey, I am happy to be here. You have no idea how flattered I am to be on your show, Kat.
Oh,
because
you.
Not only are you one of the best in the paranormal business, but really you are one of the best, most genuine people I've ever met. So anytime you ask me to be on your program, I will jump to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually blushing.
Oh no, this is true. Look, we've had this working relationship now for a while. We kind of hit the field together. We have all these questions and everything. And, I'm a fan of your show. I listen to your show. I like what you're putting out. I like the kind of realms that you delve into. So, yeah, really, honest to goodness, you're just one of my favorite people out there, Kat.
Oh, thank you. You are too, because I wouldn't have you on otherwise.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think that your listeners actually appreciate the way you approach this subject matter as well. So I think we're all very much we're all very lucky to have you as part of this crazy paranormal world.
Oh, thank you. It is crazy indeed.
It is. And now with everything shutting, because, I should have already been to a conference by now. That's the other thing that's starting to weigh heavy, is because all these conferences now where I really get to meet people that listen to me, and whenever I can lecture and talk to people, all these things are now being canceled, and it's a shame. So we have to turn to podcasts such as yours to really get our paranormal fix. And this is the way to do it. And so I think that people do appreciate whenever they have something to listen to whenever it comes to this, because all the other outlets are really starting to dry up. I did the True Tales for Terror on the Travel Channel, and I assume you guys get the Travel Channel up there in Canada, correct?
Yes, we do, but I don't subscribe to television, so I don't get it.
Yeah. So you're well, I'll tell you, for the people that do subscribe to some sort of television service, there is a plethora of networks out there that broadcast only paranormal stuff nearly 24 hours a day ad nauseum, and some of the programs are better than others. But the program that I was involved with, we probably should be working on season 2 by now, but everything is shut down. So everything is really kind of in a holding pattern right now. And this is just a great way to discuss some of the things that everybody's been up to.
I really hope that I'll be able to watch that show at some point. I hope it'll be somewhere online that I'll be able to watch it, because it really sounds fascinating. I really want to watch it.
It is. I'm very happy to be a part of it. I'm quite proud to be part of it. As a matter of fact, it's well done. It has a good budget, so it's not like these other kind of programs that is just going on a shoestring type of backing. So it looks good. It sounds good. The research in it is quality research. But like I said, I think that the next year would have even been bigger and better. And we just have to keep our fingers crossed that all this stuff kind of goes by the wayside and everything gets back to normal again.
Yeah, indeed. Are you able to talk a little bit about that show?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a vehicle for Robert Englund, from Freddy Krueger fame. It's built around him. He's almost like a Rod Serling type character. Every program has 3 little episodes in it. And sometimes they talk about cryptids like Bigfoot, or, one features a flying dragon, and a lot of ghost stories. But they're all drawn from the headlines. So these were all things that happened. Some of them, maybe 150 years ago, maybe, less than that. But they're all drawn from newspaper accounts, and they're kind of reenacted. And then they have people that are considered experts in the field commentate about it. And that's the job that I do on there.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I really like that approach. It seems a little different.
It is. It's really different than anything that we see out there. We get, there's actors in it, and they do, each episode is probably right around 16 minutes long, something like that. And they deal with things like I said, hauntings. There was one episode that featured that took place in Canada that dealt with Wendigo. It's just really fascinating things, and to see the headlines kind of brought to life in these reenactment vignettes, it's really cool to see.
Are you able to tell us the name of the show and when it will be on?
Yeah, it's on now. Actually,
okay.
It only has 2 more episodes left, and the run will be over. Yeah. So it's called True Terror with Robert Englund, and it airs on the Travel Channel on Wednesday nights.
Oh, wow. I'll have to take a look. Maybe YouTube or somebody has it out there, because like I've mentioned to you before, I really, really would like to watch it. But, I cut the cable of quite a few years ago, and I miss out on all these programs.
Oh no, I don't blame you for that. And it's a shame that it's not on other, more available type of programming. But yeah, it was 8 episodes. And the 7th episode is on this Wednesday, and the last episode is on next week. So it's almost all over now.
Oh, wow. Already.
Yeah. Already. It went quick.
How many episodes are you on?
I'm in every single program, but I'm in the majority of the episodes. So I'm usually on 2 episodes per show.
Nice.
Yep.
So we get to see you.
It was good. Yeah. And that was my first time to California to do this too. And I had to go out twice. And I really enjoyed that kind of experience as well too, because I've never had an experience like that before.
Nice.
Now there is another program that I'm on, and it's a Canadian program that we don't get down here in the United States, and that's called Red Earth Uncovered. If you've ever heard of that, that's put on by the First Nations people in Vancouver, I do believe.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe Vancouver. I could be wrong, but it's hosted by Shayla Stonechild, and she does a really good job. But it's looking at the paranormal from a First Nations point of view, and most all the stories are in Canada. It appears, I believe, this May is whenever the season comes out that I will appear on, and then the next year for 2021, I'll be in many more episodes. But I'm very proud. That's some of the best work that I've ever done with those folks. And so Red Earth Uncovered. It's really, really a remarkable show to be a part of.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's on APTN in Canada?
You are absolutely correct. That is right. That is right.
Again, I don't get TV, so I'll have to take a look. Maybe they have a website with their shows. I don't know.
They do. However, we can't play them down here in the States because there's some sort of agreement. So you folks up there in Canada can get it, but I cannot.
Oh, that's too bad. I mean, you're in it and you can't get to watch it.
I can get to watch it. I know. That's right. A sad thing about that, Kat, but I guess that's the nature of the business.
Yeah. You think because you're in it that they would send you a copy or a link or something that enables you to watch it?
Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I won't be on it until May. So maybe they'll toss me a DVD or something like that.
That'll be nice.
It would be. It would be. But it just goes to show how many people are interested in this field. Even those people that kind of scoff at it and laugh at it and brush it off, I think they'll still sneak a peek every now and then to see what's going on.
My favorite thing is when people find out that I'm into the paranormal, they'll say, "Oh, I don't believe in that." But then all of a sudden you'll hear them say, "Well, there was this one time."
Oh, everybody has this. There was this one-time thing. Everybody has that.
Yes.
I'll be at conferences and people will have that. It happen to me all the time. One of my dear friends who was extremely, extremely skeptic, she told me that she was supposed to have lived in one of the most haunted houses in this one particular area. And she, it's now a historical site, but she lived in that house. And I said, "Did anything ever happen?" She goes, "Nothing ever happened in that house. I lived there for 12 years. Occasionally a light bulb would blow out or occasionally a dish would fly out of the shelves, So she would come up with all these kind of poltergeist activities that were going on. And she just kind of shrugged it off because aren't we kind of indoctrinated not to believe in this kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, we are living with our eyes now closed, unlike any other time in human history. We're supposed to be taught by science, and we're supposed to be taught by, really, we're supposed to disregard the idea of superstition. But I think those people that really have their eyes open to all facets of the world, we see things really like they are. A lot of unexplained things are going on out there. A lot of things happen that aren't cataloged by science. Mm-hmm. And the reason science doesn't recognize it is because they simply cannot wrap their heads around it.
Agreed. It's just amazing how I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry.
Ever since the quarantine, this train of thought has been jumping the tracks a lot. So we go off the roll a lot. So there's no problem with that. And I think that's just the nature of everything. I mean, everybody we are creatures of community. We need socialization at all times. And that's really lacking now. But the one thing is, and then I spoke about this in other programs, I do believe in the idea of the Gaia theory, that our world is a living, intelligent organism. I really do. And I don't think that should sound too outlandish or too kind of new age. If we think that this world is kind of like a perfect biodome where everything can kind of live and, reproduce, and, even death means new life and everything. I think that we have taken for granted that this earth really is our cradle, and we have kind of destroyed it. There's a theory out there that this virus that is affecting the entire world was actually something that the rainforest produced to get rid of invasive species that was damaging it, and that invasive species happens to be us. To think that the world that has so taken care of us is now kind of reacting to what we're doing is really, it can become an awakening for us. I have no doubt in my mind that we will be able to conquer this and life will go on as normal. That's just what happens. There have been plagues throughout humanity. And if you look at the past and study the past, we'll see that this stuff does happen, But I think that we really need to rethink things. You can see the skyline now in Los Angeles because the smog is down. Dolphins are returning to the canals in Venice, something that hasn't happened for years. The idea that we so affect this world and everything in it, we've kind of taken it for granted. We have been the consumers. What we produce usually harms everything around us. And I think that this is kind of a wake-up call, and the earth just shrugged a little bit and trying to get this little parasite off of its back for a while. But I think we really do need to reevaluate the way we look at each other and the way we look at the world around us, because we're all part of this infinite chain of being. My life impacts your life, and your life impacts, the grass that grows. It truly does. Everything should be in perfect harmony. Everything should be in perfect synchronicity. We've decided as a human species to step out of that synchronization. We've decided not to be a part of that natural frequency, and it's been to our detriment. Sure, we have automobiles, and we could get from one end of the earth to the other in 18 hours on a plane, but it's causing so much damage, and we really need to rethink how we view ourselves. I love the idea. There's a lot of Native American philosophy that we should look at this world as if we are borrowing it from our children, which we essentially are. We're here for a very limited time, and we're going to have to leave something to future generations. And I really want to leave them something that they can be proud of and they can utilize and they can interact with. But, think about it this way. The things that has been going on right now, murders are down. We're treating each other a little bit better. The idea of, gas consumption is plummeting. You don't hear a lot about wars anymore. We used to hear that all the time. Now we don't hear about that anymore. I'm sure that, poaching is way down. The oceans are definitely attempting to repair themselves. And I think that this is just good for everything. It's kind of like a reboot, so to speak. And we really need to reevaluate how we are going to view ourselves in relation to the world around us.
Agreed. One of the things that I find fascinating too is my daughter was telling me the other day, she was reading an article. I can't remember where it was, but there is a creature that they thought was extinct. They saw it out in the streets, and I can't remember. Yeah. It's amazing. So I wonder if there's going to be, however long we're going to be in quarantine around the world, maybe we'll find proof of actual cryptids.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point that you make, because a lot of people, whenever they think of cryptids, you automatically think of things like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, these big, poster boys. But we have to understand that, cryptids are also the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger there.
Yes.
And other cryptids are like the ivory-billed woodpecker in Alabama, which has been seen, or the passenger pigeon. They don't have to be these big, outlandish type of figures. But wouldn't that be something that with this kind of settling, whenever the earth kind of settles, and to put this in perspective, if anybody goes out into the woods, whenever you start walking around, you don't see anything. It's whenever you sit there for a few minutes, let your environment kind of get used to you being there. And that's when the squirrels come out. And that's whenever you hear, these kind of new birds sing and you see, deer walking past you and everything. I think that's what's going to happen. If we let everything settle for a while, what might reappear again? You might start seeing things that we thought were extinct kind of reemerging because they think it's safe to come out.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I would love the idea that Bigfoot will be seen again. I mean, I think with our parks closed and with so fewer people going outside, it might seem like it's a safe zone now. So we might be able to collect evidence like we've never collected before. But we also have to take into consideration that if we do.
Oh, I just lost you. Uh-oh.
All part of this.
I lost you for a second there, Ron.
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I lost you for 5 seconds. But we're good.
Okay, I think I had a call coming through. How technology works every now and then. So yeah, everybody, you can hear me fine though now.
Yes, I can hear you fine now.
Perfect. Yeah, but what I was saying though, losing my train of thought. What I was saying is that we really just need to consider how we treat the world around us, or things will go further into hiding.
Yes. Oh, I lost you again. Oh,
now,
back?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Skype.
Yeah. Well, no, it's the working at home thing as well too. I'm using my phone, and I have all my work stuff patched into this phone too, so things come through there all the time like that.
That's all right. Keep going.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay.
We're technical. Good? Yeah, we're good.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Yep.
Good.
I can hear you. Oh. Okay, sorry folks. We're having some technical issues here with Skype, and technology sometimes is a great thing and sometimes it bites you in the backside, eh, Ron?
It does, and that's the thing. We talked about this earlier because what your listeners don't know is we attempted to do this earlier today, and it didn't work. There was some gremlins in the gear works, and that just happened again as well too. So hey, this is the nature, I think, of people working at home and everything getting overloaded and everything. But I apologize for that on my end as well.
Oh, it's not your fault.
So
I'm glad you're back though.
Yeah, it's a shame that we didn't, support Tesla a little bit more, because Nikola Tesla had all these grand ideas of linking the world together, and he was talking about something like the internet, 100 years before we even had the internet, and it would be so great if we were to listen to that guy. This world might be a completely different place.
Oh, it sure would. You think anybody would ever look more into his research and maybe develop some things?
Well, it's interesting. Whenever Tesla was working, because I live very close to Pittsburgh, and Tesla was employed at Westinghouse for a bit there. Whenever he was in his development phase, J.P. Morgan, he was financing these guys, and he went to Tesla. What do you have? And Tesla told him about how he would be able to bring electricity into the jungles, without running lines and everything like that. And J.P. Morgan asked, how are we going to be able to profit on this monetarily? And Tesla said, oh, this isn't for money. This is just for humanity. And Morgan then started to finance Edison then, because Edison was fine with taking a buck. But could you imagine how this world would have changed if they would not have put that poor guy down? Because obviously, he was doing some pretty amazing things by all accounts. Whoever you talk to, he was doing some pretty incredible things in his experimentations, and I'm sure that his information is out there. But you have to understand, if it's not going to make money, how much of this would have been suppressed? It's all about money making. All about money making.
If it wasn't for the money, like you said, our world would be completely different.
Oh, yeah. Jonas Salk, whenever he came out with the polio vaccine, they interviewed him and they said, how lucrative this could be. And he said, well, you don't charge for the sun, do you? He said, this has to be something that's free because it helps all of humanity. And that changed the world. At that time, that type of altruism changed the world as we know it. And now you look at people out there profiting off of inhalers and profiting off of
horrible.
Antibiotics and everything else like that. It's a real shame how we now view sickness and health. If you're rich, you can probably stay healthy, but if you're poor, get ready to remain sick.
Yep. I've always said pharmaceuticals aren't really in the business of getting us better. It's they're in the market of keeping us ill.
Oh, one of the biggest impacts on society would be if they would find a cure for cancer, because the amount of money that would be lost in just the treatment and prevention of that disease, you would see things going bankrupt. And and I'm sure there are great people out there in research working for a cure. But I think that it would get to the point where somebody would have to almost go rogue and say, I've got the cure, and not attach themselves to anybody. I think it would really come down to something like that.
Yep. Agreed. If someone could actually have enough money, some multi-billionaire who's actually a genius and could, come up with all this stuff and doesn't have to worry about money, just bring it out for the people.
That's right. Just bring it for the people. That's right.
Yep.
And we think about the idea of money and what it takes to get things funded. All the ludicrous things that are being funded. Let's put that. That's the other thing we should think about as well, too, during this time of isolation. What seems to be important right now, it would be great if the world would kind of come together and get some of their best minds together and say, okay, let's tackle this together. I would love to see something like that happen.
Yeah.
But also getting back to the idea of the Gaia theory that we spoke about, not only do I think that the world is a living, breathing organism, but I also think that everything that harms us is out there as a cure someplace. I mean, we probably mowed it over or burned it up, years ago. That's a sad thing. But in these kind of perfect contained environment, this kind of contained bioculture that we're going through, I really truly feel that anything out there that harms us, that came from this world that harms us, the cure is out there as well too. And I think that's what we should be looking for as well. I really think the idea of this elixir for life, this philosopher's stone, whatever you want to call it, is out there. I'm just hoping that in our infinite stupidity, we didn't burn it up or shoot it or make it become extinct. That's one of my fears.
Yeah, I totally agree. Someone I had read that many, many years ago, saying that with every ailment, there's a cure, not just something to make us feel more comfortable, but an actual cure. And with, the rainforest, how there's so much deforestation there, what are we actually getting rid of?
That's right. You could imagine, talking about a plant like the Venus flytrap that only grows in 2 places in the United States. I think there's some place in South Carolina and some place in Georgia. Very, very limited range for this particular carnivorous plant. And you could imagine that there was a very, very small range in the rainforest that we simply burned away.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think of it.
Oh, it is. Oh, it really is. And that's why I keep on thinking about being mindful. We should always be mindful in everything that we do, because it does affect every other living creature in this creation.
Yeah, kind of like the butterfly effect, I guess.
Exactly like the butterfly effect. That's a great analogy. The idea that what happens even to the most minute of our creatures, that nothing is here accidentally, that everything is supposed to kind of ebb and flow together. I wrote a book last year entitled On Fairies, and that is one of the things that I've come to a conclusion, the idea of this kind of, this vibrational force, this synchronization with the world. And the fairy for so long was this being, this elemental intelligence that really had that synchronicity going to it. It was on the same frequency as the world around it. And, I think that whenever we talk about people having a third eye, this inner perception of the much more vast reality around them, or people that see fairies, or people that even see ghosts or Bigfoot. It's very possible that those people are more closely aligned to that frequency than other people are.
I totally agree on that. I felt that way for a while, actually. About the fairies, it was interesting. As I mentioned to you the other day, my daughter and I were driving in the car, and we were listening to you on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, and I listened to the first 2 hours, and or the first little bit of it, and my daughter got the last hour of it. Now, she doesn't like to listen to the same shows I do, so she was kind of a captive audience. We were driving in the car, and I said, well, I'm listening to my show. She really liked it. So when we got to our destination, the show hadn't been over yet. So when we got back in the car, she goes, are you going to put that show back on? I'm like, oh yeah, you like that? She's, yeah, this guy's really interesting. So,
well, I feel very, now I'm blushing, so I'm very flattered. Tell me thank you for that.
I will. No, she thought you were extremely fascinating, and she was really transfixed to everything that you were saying. And we were having a little discussion afterwards about the fairies. She watches some paranormal TV shows, and there was this couple that bought this house, and they were having what they thought was paranormal activity, thinking it was ghosts. So they got a team to go in, and they had a resident psychic as well. Turns out that it wasn't ghosts, it was fairies, because they cut down a tree in their yard that was just in the way. And after that the fairies wreaked havoc because it was their tree. So
that's right.
Yep. So she was told so they were told that you need to plant another tree and put milk out to say, I'm really sorry. And once they did that, the activity stopped.
And what I had said before about the idea of everything is interrelated to everything, that simple act of cutting down a tree, I even as a kid, I felt bad whenever trees were cut down. And there was a weeping willow tree in front of our house in the town that I grew up in. And I loved that tree. And I remember coming home one day from grade school, and the tree was cut down because my uncle told my grandmother that weeping willows will somehow attack the pipes and break your water line, whatever kind of thing. So I remember how much I cried because that tree was cut down. And I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, we should leave well enough alone. Yep.
Granted, this couple had to cut down the tree because it was in the way of something to do with the driveway or something. I don't know. But after they found out what really was going on, like I said, they did replant another tree to apologize. But my father always said that if you're going to cut down a tree, you should probably plant 5 other trees as well.
Oh, I love that philosophy. Yep. Yeah, so if you have to take one thing out, replace it with a multitude of other things. I love that idea.
Yep. He's also the one that told me, because as a child, we used to go camping an awful lot. And he used to always say, leave the campsite cleaner than when you arrived. So that made me that I just thought of that when you mentioned something earlier about keeping our planet clean and safe and take care of it for our children. And it just kind of reminded me of what my father used to say.
That's right. Well, it's interesting because Thor Heyerdahl, whenever he did his Kon-Tiki, to see if the Polynesians could actually make it to Hawaii on, this kind of reed type of vessel. I guess this was back in the 1960s. This just entered my mind, or I would have had, more background information on this. But now remember, though, we're going back over 50 years here. But he said that this is in the South Pacific with really very few people around anywhere, because the South Pacific is just such a large, vacuous type of area. But even back then, they said they encountered some sort of pollution in the ocean every single day, some form of garbage every day they came across.
That's so sad.
It is. And you can imagine what it will be like now.
Oh, jeepers. It would be horrible.
It would. That is the thing. One of my favorite things to do with my kids is when we go on vacation, we're not into amusement parks and such. We like to do things that involve the natural world. It's usually free, which is a good thing because my family is so large. But one of the things that we do, one of the things that we absolutely love is go into the ocean. And just think about the last time you walked along a beach or along the even a lake. How often do you come across pollution? It's sad. It's a daily occurrence, and we kind of overlook it now.
Yeah, my home province in New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada, there's a well-known beach there called Parley Beach. And growing up, that's where everybody went in the summertime, was Parley Beach. And it was kind of a wild beach at first. You had like the wild grass and everything. And people started building cottages, and it got to be more and more popular over the years. And they built this huge restaurant there, and concession stands and everything. And it's more... it's so much more built up. And over the years, I haven't been home in about 10 years, but from what I've been hearing from family and friends is the beach is so polluted now. It's nothing for them to be out in the water and they'll see a piece of toilet paper float by. And I was just like, oh my God, and people actually still go to that beach? That's disgusting.
Yeah, I've been to New Brunswick one time. A few years ago, I took my family up to Lubec, Maine. And right across the bridge there is New Brunswick. And look, we still have wild places on this planet. Wild places within an easy drive to cities like Boston and New York City. Even Toronto. Toronto, think about that big, cosmopolitan city up there. Right around that area is great small towns and great woodlands and everything. So we still have wild areas. We just need to come to the decision that not everything is something for us to use, that we need to practice preservation more than just this consumption.
Yes. Again, my father, he still says this to this day. If you're out in the forest, or wherever, and you see a pretty flower that don't pick it, because somebody else would like to enjoy that flower later on. So don't be selfish. Just leave it there for nature, and somebody else can enjoy it.
That's right. But don't we as human beings think if we see something beautiful, we need to own it? Or, even the people that hunt, I am going to prove that I am a better man because I'm going to take a larger animal with a larger rack or what have you. And it becomes not something for sustainability. You're not talking about feeding your family. You're talking about a trophy that you can put out and kind of gloat over. This never has happened in the history of mankind outside of medieval royalty whenever they would go on a hunt tracking down something. This has never happened. This worldview that we have is insane, that we can look at the world and say what we have out there is for the taking. That's something that's very, very new.
Yes. Makes me wonder if some of these hunters, maybe someday a cryptid will be hunting them.
Wouldn't that be something? Exactly. Yeah, that will be good karma. The idea that there's something out there looking for another trophy, and they try to find the biggest hunter to take down. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I found it fascinating when you were on with Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio. You had mentioned about cryptids and how around the world we have pretty much the same creatures, but just with different names. And that really caught my attention because, as you know, in college I had to do a presentation to the class in order to finish a particular course that I was taking. And I chose it on cryptids from around the world. And I mentioned that, how, like, for example, Bigfoot is in North America. It's called Yowie someplace else. It's called, I can't think of the other names, but you know where I'm going at.
Sure.
It's just so fascinating because, to me, we have, everyone is so different. We believe, our belief systems are different around the world, but yet you have all this mythology. And when you look at it, every nationality, every race, every culture has pretty much the same thing.
They do. Whenever I write my books, I always look at it from the formation of the archetype. And the philosophy and the psychology of Carl Jung, the idea that the archetype is with us is because it's something that's meaningful to the human consciousness. We as a people need it. Not a particular society, but in general, humanity needs something like this. So I've written books about mermaids, about ghosts and vampires and werewolves and Bigfoot and fairies and all this other kind of stuff. And you know what? Every culture around the world has some form of that particular cryptid or that particular creature, and it makes it become an archetype. Absolutely, utterly fascinating whenever we think of it from that perspective. They just go by different names. But yeah, so that's something to be said, that part of our DNA, what is embroidered into our very DNA, what makes us human, has strands of the monster in it, has strands of the unexplained and the supernatural in it. And, you know, even if you don't believe in creatures that go bump in the night, from a psychological point of view, this is just as fascinating. Why we need to, if these creatures aren't flesh and blood, why we needed to invent them. And how did every culture around the world invent them the same? It makes sense to me as a researcher that there was not as much invention going on as encounters with something. And that's what really has left this indelible scar on the human imagination, that sometime in our formative years, in our shared humanity, we encountered creatures that we simply cannot explain, that have become the archetypes that we see today in things like Bigfoot and the werewolf and the vampire. And that's the way I write, and that's the way I look at the world in terms of paranormal research, that these things have been with us forever, and they've so impacted us as humanity that we carry that imagination with us still.
Would you say it's almost like, I can't remember the terminology. Is it genetic memory? Is that?
You know, yeah, you can have genetic memory. You can have cultural memory. I do believe definitely in this this transmigration of thought and images and things. That is why, like, if we studied Carl Jung, you know, the idea of like an Earth Mother it makes sense in all cultures, or the idea of how you obtain knowledge, or the hero's quest. All of these things are part of our humanity. And whenever we take this by extension into the field of the paranormal, yes, that these things impacted us to the point that they left a mark in our, not only our genetic memory, like you had said, but also in our cultural memory as well. So we have this faint, like whenever you go into a dark room, you're naturally afraid, even though we live in the 21st century and we have lights and everything like that. We still tend to turn on the lights, and we still worry about sounds that we hear at the night, because those sounds at one time could have meant life or death to us. You know, that we still have that with us. And I think that we don't realize that kind of stuff, that we can fly around the world in one day. We can talk to anybody instantaneously on Facebook. But we're still afraid of bumps that occur at the night because we don't know what that might be.
Exactly. That kind of reminds me of an episode of Star Trek, Next Generation, when I can't exactly remember why it happened, but everyone was de-evolving.
Oh, no, I don't think I'm familiar with this.
Oh, yeah. One crew member was transforming into an arachnid, and some of them were transforming into chimps, and some of the crew members were afraid of the other crew members, and they didn't understand why, but it's because of their primal fear that was coming back, because everyone's de-evolving into different creatures. So that was a really interesting episode.
That is, and it makes you think about that as well, too.
Yeah.
The idea of evolution and de-evolution. Look, a lot of this stuff, like this fear of the darkness and things that go bump in the night, that should almost be a part of our bodies, almost like the appendix. It's something residual, something that we don't need anymore.
Yep.
But, you know, we still have this kind of stuff in us. this fear that there's something in the woods, the fear of liminal areas, that space in between spaces. We still have that as part of who we are as human beings. Every place has a forest that we're supposed to avoid, like the suicide forest in Japan,
Yes.
or the great forest, the black forest in Germany. All these great places around the world are places to fear. And isn't it interesting that some of our most famous cryptids reside in forests? And it's just, I really believe, from all the research that I've done, going on nearly 30 years worth of research, it's making me come to the conclusion that when we talk about things like Bigfoot and werewolves and all these great monsters out there, that if they don't exist now, they definitely existed sometime within our past.
I really hope you're right. Well, I guess in a way I hope you're right, because some of those creatures are not exactly friendly.
Well, that's right. They're not exactly friendly. And I think that, until we started to put walls up around our towns and fortify our structures, we were prey animals. It took a long time to be the apex predator. So whenever we look through history, because I'm a student of history and I love history so much, but we can find remains of human beings that have been taken down by large birds, and we know that we fed upon each other. So the idea of cannibalism and all this kind of stuff is part of our human closet, the skeleton in our human closet. A lot of bad things have happened to us, and we've done a lot of heinous things throughout our history as well too. And this also builds into the archetype of creatures and the unexplained and horrible things that lurk about in the periphery, looking for us as prey.
With all the research you've done, what's your favorite creature or lore that's really gotten your attention, that you're more fascinated with than others?
Well, I mean, it's always going to be Bigfoot for me, because that's something that my mother instilled in me whenever I was very young. She would take me out looking for this creature. We would go on the back roads. We would go on walks through the woods. A lot of times, I'm sure she did it just so she could spend time with my brother and I. But I think a lot of times she was out there, generally looking for something. She was a young mom, so we're talking about somebody in their late 20s taking out, two boys that were 8 and 6. I think that she probably had a great time doing that kind of stuff. And I still do that kind of stuff with my kids. Bigfoot has always been, I think for everybody, probably gone in the field of cryptozoology because of Bigfoot. But it's one of those things that seems so much like us, yet so different. It's that one thing that is kind of, evades us. It's just beyond our grasp. It's so much like us, but yet so different. One person asked me whenever I wrote my book on Bigfoot if Bigfoot was my alter ego. And the more that I think about that, he might be everybody's alter ego. He's the wild man. He's the one that lives without rules. He doesn't abide by civility. He's that wild, essential, bestial creature that has a working, functioning mind, that he doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. He goes out and does his own thing.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much what everybody wants to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think your mother ever had an experience with Bigfoot, and that's why she kept going out looking for it with you guys?
You know what? I think that she's had experiences of things that she could not identify. A lot of things with UFOs, I remember her was seeing things that looked like fireballs in the sky before. I think that she was always very open to the idea that there's something out there that cannot be explained. So I think that she probably did have her own little private awakenings, some that she shared with us and some that she didn't. But I really think that she would have been a fantastic researcher. Of course, we didn't have much cryptozoologists back in the day, and Search Of came out, a little bit later after we were doing that kind of stuff. But I think that she could have really made inroads as, a female investigator out there. But I owe it all to her. Everything that I've accomplished in my life in this field is because of her influence on me. So.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that would have been really great if she could have getting into the research part like you did.
Oh, I know. I great. She actually passed away when she was only 55 years old. I mean,
Oh, wow.
she would be about 75 years old now.
Hmm.
And I've often wondered how much fun I would have writing with her now. I would love to be able to work with her as a partner now. But it's unfortunate. But I feel that she's looking down on me, and I still dedicate my books to her because without her, I wouldn't have been able to do
Oh,
this.
that's nice. Wow, I like that. That makes me feel happy for some reason.
No, it makes me feel happy too.
Nice.
Yep.
I had heard you mention before that because I know you've written quite a bit on fairies, and I've heard you mention in a few other interviews that you've done that pretty much the only reason why you got into it is because your daughter had asked you to start writing on fairies because it was interesting to her, and then you thought,
Yep.
"Wow, this is really fascinating." I love that.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what happened. Uh, uh, so I wrote a book called The Unexplained World of the Chestnut Ridge,
Hmm.
which was a lot of my research in this area that I live at right now. So I did a lot of research around here, and it took me, about a year to write this book, to compile all my research and put it out. And my daughter asked me one day, she said, do you think fairies, or no, do you think mermaids exist? I said, I never, considered it much. She goes, you write about all that Bigfoot crap. Why don't you see if you can find anything on mermaids? And I thought,
Ah,
well, let me start some very cursory type of research into it to see what I can come up with. And I became fascinated with it. I was going to be one of these people that wrote one book because it's such a very it takes a long time. It's a
mm-hmm.
grueling task to write a book, and I wasn't going to write anything else. I thought I would write this Chestnut Ridge book. It got me some minor notoriety, and I thought I'll just stick with it. But she really urged me on to look at things on an individual basis. And whenever I started to study the history of the mermaid, I was taken aback. And then after the mermaid book came my book on werewolves, and then the Bigfoot book, and then of course the fairy book. But I owe it all to I think the best influences on my life has always been women. My mother and now my daughter that really pushed me into digging deeper into the field.
Maybe there's a piece of your mother in your daughter.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. I think
Yeah.
that that's one thing that I was very lucky with. And then my oldest daughter, Devin, I remember I went to a conference in Philadelphia, and this was a couple years ago. And so my daughter was only probably 13 or 14 years old at the time. And we were on the third floor of this very, very old mansion that was built right around the time of George Washington. So definitely before 1799.
Mm.
And somebody came up to the third floor, and she finally found my daughter, and she went up to my daughter and she said, I sensed you whenever you came into the building. And I had no idea what was going on. This was kind of startling for me.
Mm-hmm.
But she said that, she was intuitive, and she felt this psychic presence in the building, and she had to seek her out. And she came to my daughter. And I think that that's one thing that I am lucky with. I think that, I found myself in the perfect family with my children, because I think that they all have the capability to be open up to this kind of stuff.
Wow, yeah, that must have been really scary to hear that at first from a stranger.
Yeah, it was. And then she asked my daughter about the hauntings in the house, and she
Hmm.
said to my daughter, she said, "You know about the spirits in the house?" And my daughter said, "You mean the children?" And the lady said, "Yes." So my
Wow.
daughter was picking up on things. Now, of course, I never told her not to develop this any further,
Hmm.
but for whatever reason, it wasn't of an interest to her. And I think now it's kind of like probably not even there anymore. But I think that all children are naturally opened up to these kind of things,
Yep.
and it's just the way they approach it later in life.
Agreed. First of all, I must apologize. Yes, it was mermaids, not fairies. I was mistaken. Uh, But yeah, I think all children are so incredibly sensitive, and we're just taught to, no, you didn't hear that. No, you were dreaming, or it's your imagination, or you don't have an imaginary friend. So
All that stuff.
we're taught to
That's
tune
right.
it all out.
That's right. We are definitely, we are indoctrinated and we are educated not to believe in such things. That's very, very sad. Look, as a kid and even now as an adult who's 51 years old, I still want to go to Neverland with Peter Pan, and I still want to go out into the woods, and I still want to, build rocket ships into the sky. I want to do all that kind of stuff because life would be too gosh darn boring if you didn't want to do that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, my father always says, I refuse to grow up.
I refuse to grow up as well too. In
Yeah.
psychology, they have this thing called the Peter Pan syndrome where
Yep.
you want to be a perpetual boy.
Yeah.
I think that we should all do that. I think that, we would have less stresses on our jobs. I think that the economy as we know would not exist. I think that we would all work 20-hour work weeks, and the rest of the time we would be outside playing. I think that the worst thing that ever happened is the Industrial Revolution, when we took little children out of schools and we put them into factories. That's the worst thing that ever happened in the
Yes.
history of humanity. And then we can start charting the downfall from there.
Never thought of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I have a degree in history, so like I'm not all kind of this kind of a genre type person that just focuses on the supernatural, but the idea of history, whenever little girls were taken out of the home from learning things, so that they could work in factories, and little kids, and this is something that just didn't happen in the Victorian age. I remember a lady telling me a story from the 1900s, from about 1920. That her brother, whenever he was told that it was time for him to go work in the mines, he was old enough to work in the mines. She remembers him getting up for work and carrying his lunch pail, and the lunch pail was so big it was actually dragging on the ground. So put that in perspective. How sad that is. But yeah, the idea of childhood is a very modern conception. Childhood did not exist much until the very late 1800s, early 1900s. Childhood was seen as just an inconvenient stage preparing this person to go to work. And whenever we had the factories fueled up in England, and it was just a very devastating time for kids. And then we have this kind of resurgence with people writing The Wizard of Oz, people writing all this other kind of that what we had said about the Peter Pan. That's whenever childhood literature and early adolescent literature comes into play. But for the most part, if you think back, there was no childhood literature being produced in the Middle Ages or in the Greco-Roman era, because it simply didn't matter. It's not until relatively recently that we took the children. We didn't take them for granted. We put value into them. And that's something that that's what I do as part of my work. I work along with children, and children are very special creatures, and they still have their eyes completely open to this world.
For sure. They have a totally different perspective on everything.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't want to be the person to ever stop them from seeing the world that way.
Yeah. Back in the days when they used to say children should be seen and not heard. That was that must have been horrible back then.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing, because they were intrusions. Not until they could go out and work. 11 or 12 years old, or sometimes earlier, were they seen. This was early childhood was nothing more than a stage that they had to get through to get to become an adult.
Yeah. If you had a chance to go anywhere in the world to do your research, where would you go and what would you research?
I would go, and people might find this odd, but I have a fascination with ocean cryptids, the sea monsters. And I think that I would like to try to go around the areas. I would like to say I would go to some place warm, but I think I would like to go into Scandinavia, in the North Sea area. I think I would like to try to, to look and research into the lore a little bit more of the things that were going along up there with the Viking ideas of the Kraken and all these great sea monster stories that came out. And also we have to keep in mind that there's a lot of mermaid mythology that comes out from that area as well too. So I would really like to delve deeper into the idea of these seagoing cryptids.
That's interesting. When I was doing a little bit of research for my presentation, it was really interesting for me to find out that even today, there's people around the world that claim that they're seeing mermaids.
Oh, there was such a furor about mermaids being sighted in Israel that the Israeli government a few years ago put out a bounty of such on them. And then it led to a whole bunch of this internet crap with photoshopping and stuff. But, people still see mermaids all the time. And I think that says something to, that we are not completely keeping our eyes closed to what's going on. We're not completely incredulous to the world around us.
One of the discussions my daughter and I had when we heard you the other day was when we were talking about ocean creatures, and if what was it called? The huge shark. What's that called again?
Oh, the megalodon.
Megalodon, yeah. And you were mentioning about we don't know what's at the bottom. So what creature could still be there? There may be so-called cryptids that we call them now. I found it fascinating where you're finding whales and large sharks with huge suction cup marks all over. Like you're finding the torsos of them, and you find huge suction cups on them that would lead us to believe that huge squid, the name escapes me right now, are actually down there.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. When we think about the Kraken or the giant squid, this very fancy scientific name of Architeuthis,
that was the name I was looking for.
Yeah, the giant squid.
Yeah.
But we definitely know that they exist out there. The Japanese have photographic imagery. We catch them from time to time, so we know they're out there. But what we're dealing with here is these very large mega predators out there that I think, without a doubt, we could stake some money down that there's something out there still in existence. Now, we might not be alive to claim our winnings after this particular wage, this particular bet, but I think that without a doubt, anybody would say, even the most ardent scientists would say, that there's something out there that is not cataloged, doesn't quite beat the eye.
Oh, now, for
sure. So we're talking about, why don't we see these things? Well, what I pointed out in my mermaid book is that everything that travels by the ocean emits some sort of sound. This is not the age of cell travel anymore. But it's interesting because there was a book written, and I'm not sure how long ago it was, but these two British gentlemen, I believe they were in the military, but they wanted to row across the Atlantic Ocean, which is something that I would never think about doing. But this is a mainstream type of book where these guys were trying to break a record, and there was a story in there that one night this large head came up out of the water with eyes the size of dinner plates, kind of acknowledged them and went back under the water again. So even people who aren't looking out for these kind of things see these kind of things. And I think the only way we would have encounters of these things in the modern world is if we're not on something that's producing, some sort of artifact in the environment, like a sonar type of sound or an engine type of sound. But I think these things are still out there, and I think we can still encounter them. I necessarily wouldn't want to encounter them unless it's from a distance. Yes. But I think these things are still out there.
Makes me wonder if there are these super large creatures down there, and well, we know there are, but because of all the ships and everything, we have noisy oceans because of man. So maybe they're just keeping their distance.
That's all that it would take too. Look, it's not like hunting for Bigfoot in the woods where you have to hide in one forest. And the ocean has volume. That's the other thing we don't consider. Not only is it vast, but it also has volume. So, something can go 7 miles down and go undetected. So, they could be in ranges where people just simply don't go into. Or my theory is they simply stay out of shipping routes.
Yep.
There's so much sound in those areas, they simply stay away from that sound.
The sound probably bothers them.
It probably bothers them. They know they're people, and I'm sure at one point, that they've had encounters with people before and it didn't end up very nice. So they know to stay away from them.
Exactly. We all know that once humans are afraid of something, they want to destroy it, not try to understand it.
That's right. That's what happens all the time. Exactly.
Yep. Which is very sad, but human nature, I guess.
I think that's our commentary for the day. That's the theme throughout the whole entire day, I think, so far.
Could be. Yeah. Well, we're at the end already, Ron.
You know what? I greatly appreciate this. I'm working from home, so unfortunately I have to return to the tediousness of that. But I am so thankful, and you're such a generous person to allow me to come on in and pontificate and unload and download some of my information and gaining information from you as well, too, which I absolutely love to have our conversations. But again, Kat, I'm absolutely flattered that you asked me to be on your show. One of my favorite people in the entire world, and I cannot wait to do this again.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we'll definitely have you on again. And I really appreciate you taking the time from your busy work day, where you're working at home, to take a few moments and have a nice chat with me.
Always, Kat. You can always count on me.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Cryptoguru. I love that.
I do too. Good old Dave Scott. I love it too.
Well, thank you so much. And I will be adding, folks, as usual, some in the show notes links where you can find Ron. But before I do that, jeepers, I'm really having a hard time with my speaking abilities today. Maybe, like you said, it's because I've been home for too long.
I think that's it. I absolutely think so.
Good grief. Why don't you tell us where you can be found?
You can find me on Amazon. And that's really the best. The websites that I use, I'm not as active on websites as I should be. Really, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can go inside the Goblin Universe at gmail.com. That's my personal email address. You can get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook under Ronald L. Murphy Jr. If you want to get a book, you can go on Amazon, or if you contact me directly, I can even sign it for you and send it out to you. But so those are the best ways to get a hold of me, either through social media or directly through the good old internet machine there and email.
Perfect. Again, I'll be adding those links in the show notes, so it'll be easy for everyone to just click and contact you.
I love any kind of interaction that I can get from people, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Ron, and you take care. Be safe out there.
Hey, you too. We'll talk to you very soon.
For sure.
Bye-bye.
Well, we've made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care of each other. And if you'd like to be on the show or have questions and comments, just drop me an email, paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Paranormal Heart would like to extend a special thank you to purpleplanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on Paranormal Heart are those of the host and participants.